22. Let's try to put our hands around what we saw, the evidence we saw from both in the Big 12 and also in the top 25 and other stories surrounding it with coaching changes, etc. The Big 12, Texas Tech beats Texas. K-State goes into Norman. They just, for whatever reason, have had a great success like they used to have against Texas, against Oklahoma, and Baylor goes into Ames and takes care of their business, and perhaps the loss in Provo allowed them to handle Ames a little bit better. Paul Craigie, why do we have to say there was one team with the best win? All three of those were very impressive wins in the Big 12.
Yeah, and Tech got through it with kind of a mess at the end of the game. You know, some of the things that were going on, it's like they're kind of trying to figure out how to actually be in a game like this on the fly. But the fact that they've played a couple close games early in the year, I think helped them out a little bit, and that's a big win over Texas, because you're probably only going to play them one more time. So to get one, on the way close to out the door is huge for any school in the Big 12, especially one in the state of Texas and one that hasn't beat them very much and got beat by 35 last year. Baylor looked like themselves for the first time really this year, I thought, for the lion's share of that game. And, Kansas State and Adrian Martinez, for the first time this year, looked like a team that everybody thought that they might be when that transfer happened. Now, can that continue past the Oklahoma game? Was that, one big moment of momentum? But, yeah, that was all really exciting this weekend.
Yeah, the last couple of weeks you've asked that question, and I've had that response of why do we have to pick just one, and kind of felt bad last week doing that because it just kind of like shoots a hole in just to come out of the gates. But then again, no, I don't, because this is a perfect example of why I say that.
Absolutely.
There's not just a single thing to go like they're the winners of the weekend. Like that's exactly the point, is that there are multiple winners just in the Big 12 alone coming out of this weekend. What a weekend for the conference, and just calamity, and the race of, who's going to be there at the end, and who's going to be there here in a couple of weeks still in contention, and who's going to completely fall to the wayside from expectations, and who's going to be the surprise team. And I just think it's a really fun league right now where there's a lot of unpredictability, because there's not necessarily a great team, but there's a bunch of pretty good teams. And I don't think there's any really bad teams. So that just gives you not really a high top end necessarily, although I think that remains to be seen for the Big 12, because there's 3 or 4 teams that may still arguably be up in that higher end, but I don't think there's anybody in the bottom end, and I think there's at least all 10 that are right there in the average to pretty good range. So I think that's going to make for a lot of fun, given that this was only the first weekend, and this is just the Big 12 we're talking about.
Yeah, and both TCU and Kansas, we have not and won't and will not forget about what they were able to do. TCU beating SMU in a cross-area town in a way together rivalry, joined at the hip with Dallas and Fort Worth, and then also Kansas with unbeaten Duke in town taking care of their business. Should Kansas be ranked?
I
think so, yeah.
Yes, I mean, why not? They're 4-0. They've not just beaten up on like just the worst of the worst. I mean, I think that, they've gone out, they beat West Virginia. I think that's a quality win for Kansas. Yep. They beat Duke. I don't think Duke's just some pushover. I don't think they're very good either, but I don't think that they're like just the basketball school Duke. I think Mike Elko gives them some level of respectability. So, yeah, I mean.
Maybe Houston.
And they beat Houston, who is just in a world of shambles right now. We got to have a Dana Holgerson conversation at some point, probably sooner rather than later, depending on how the next couple of weeks go, because that just doesn't seem like a good situation right now, especially coming out of Saturday. But, yeah, they beat Houston. So, I mean, those might not be the best teams in the world, but I think that's still a better schedule than a lot of others have probably played at this point. And they've been the clear, best team in those contests. I think that they've, really showed a lot with this offense of theirs. And, we'll see over the course of the long haul. I wonder about them was just that when they start getting into these games every week, when especially they start playing a lot more physical teams, do they have the depth built up? Because that was always a question. That was kind of the struggle, was building up this roster. Can they have the depth to just guide them through what's going to be battle after battle after battle here over the next few weeks? But besides that, yeah, man, I think that they deserve to be ranked. And I can understand part of the reason why you'd be a little bit hesitant. But if we're going off what they've done and not what we think of this team or what they might do, which is what I think a lot of writers get confused, then, yeah, I think based on their resume, they deserve to be in the top 25.
Yeah, you're right, Craig. Ranking is what you've done. Not what you're going to do.
Or who
not
your
what
logo
you're-
is, or
Yeah.
anything, what conference
Now-
you're in.
Now, look, I think they've got a tough one against Iowa State this weekend. I think offensively versus defensively, that's probably the worst matchup they've seen so far this year because Iowa State plays a defense that essentially begs you to go underneath and then cuts you in half. So while Jalen Daniels can do a lot of great things underneath and all that, that's going to be tough because they're going to be very physical, and I don't think they've played a team that is as physical as Iowa State yet. But again, they have an offense that kind of scores in bunches. So if they can score 21 points like that, Iowa State's probably in a hole.
Yeah. So, well, here was what we have. So the Big 12 this weekend, you have Oklahoma State coming into Waco. You have Kansas State and Texas Tech. The West Virginia plays on the road against Texas down in Austin, among other games. Those aren't the only games. There's other games that have to be played. And again, we could see the teams that lost this weekend turn right around and take care of their business and jump right back into it with whatever they also do. And probably there's a couple of chances that will happen. Oklahoma State was able to sit back and go, wow, look at everything that's going on. So now you have Baylor, Oklahoma State 3. The 2 games last year in Stillwater, the one in Arlington, which came down to inches. And then also the game coming up in Waco.
Do you know that's exactly 3 games in a year?
No, I didn't think of it that way in the calendar year.
365 days. This will be their 3rd matchup coming up on Saturday.
I want to jump into this only for a second.